When my neighbor accused me of running an unauthorized business, I never expected it would lead to my garage becoming the town's next DMV. Who knew chaos could feel so liberating? Before we begin today's deranged HOA story, tell me you haven't had your fill of irrational and power-grabbing HOA nonsense. Smash that like button to show you're on my side, and drop a comment if you've ever faced off against an overbearing homeowners association. Be sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell, because this saga's only getting crazier from here. The festival rambled on, laughter like a symphony reverberating through the neighborhood. As I coordinated the paper shuffling operations, using an old table as my workstation that doubled as a snack stand, I suddenly became everyone's favorite DMV employee. I was fielding questions like a champion, balancing an incoming traffic of license renewals and stolen moments of chatting with neighbors. No, sir, you cannot sponsor an emotional support llama for your license photo, but I appreciate your creativity, I bellowed with a wink. My banter turned the oppressive atmosphere of lurking HOA surveillance into one of revelry and humor, and it was glorious. I caught sight of Karen, her arms crossed so tightly that I was convinced her pastel cardigan might just knit itself into a noose of frustration. This was my moment. The sheer absurdity of this whole situation was far too entertaining to let Karen's sour demeanor dampen my spirit. With a growing group of children buzzing around, it felt like a carnival. A delightful chaos. I handed out sidewalk chalk and encouraged the kids to draw on the drive. Let's call this art project Defying Ordinances, I announced grandly, my hands motioning as grandly as a magician revealing their final trick. The kids went wild, chalk flying, laughter echoing as pastel hues collided with neighborly disputes. The inspiring sight of their creativity exploded against the backdrop of Karen's scowl spurred me into full entertainer mode. Hey, can I get a round of applause for my little artists? The energetic clapping that followed felt like a victory dance, and for a moment, I fancied myself a neighborhood legend, perhaps even a local folk hero in the saga against the less-than-fun-havers of our HOA. However, Karen, the unflappable queen of chaos herself, wasn't done just yet. With an impressive puffing of her chest, she stormed over, inching closer as if preparing to leap into a boxing ring. Her incredulous expressions had hardened into resolve. I could almost hear her internal pep talk. I stood tall, channeling my inner gladiator, and braced for whatever nonsense she was about to spew. "You're undermining our community values, Jenna," she barked, raising her voice to a near-deafening pitch. "Look at this pandemonium. This isn't how neighbors are supposed to act." I fought back a smirk. Pandemonium was always Karen's go-to phrase, like a misguided battle cry when she felt her precious order was threatened. I didn't even need to respond. The delighted cheers of my neighbors provided a defense. "Order? Who needs order when we can have fun?" I declared, throwing my arms wide open, inviting the applause and smiles from my growing crowd. "Let us pave a new path, one that involves cotton candy and karaoke, if you will. This is what community should look like, Karen, and if that's pandemonium, I guess you'll just have to live with it." The rush surged through me. The triumphant feeling of power resonated deeply. Karen's glossy facade began to crack like an egg dropped from a height, and the look on her face felt like I had just performed a miracle. Was I truly winning? I could feel Mike's nudging pride radiate from his corner of the garage, proving that not just I, but we, were all invested in this battle of wit and will. Seizing the moment with gusto, I added, "And let's be honest, how often does the HOA send out notices of excitement in the neighborhood? I'm practically a licensed excitement distributor over here." The collective laughter trended into whooping cheers. I felt like a conductor summoning every player in this wild, improvised symphony. I was no longer just Jenna from down the street. Today, I was a movement, a reason for neighbors to come together and truly enjoy life beyond HOA regulations. The spiraling narrative switched entirely, and Karen, a mere spectator in a comedic universe, was rendered powerless in this performance of ridiculousness. It was my show, and I intended to keep the curtain rising on this engaging escapade. As the laughter continued to swell, an adrenaline-fueled idea burst forth in my mind. "All right, friends, let's engrave this moment." I grabbed a spare marker and scribbled Jenna's DMV. "Every license comes with a side of salsa," on a makeshift sign, promptly hoisting it into the air. "Who's next for their paperwork?" I grinned, an unmistakable sense of camaraderie uniting us as an alternative to the conformity Karen wanted to impose. We made a straight-up party of the mundane, the thrill of rebellion fueling our spirits. Karen, meanwhile, was pacing like a caged lion waiting for the right moment to pounce. Honestly, if I hadn't been having such a great time, I would have felt bad for her. Almost. In typical Karen fashion, she was clearly struggling to find her footing. frantically scanning for approval from the remaining HOA members who had not yet retreated into the comforting arms of my garage party. "You people are embarrassing yourselves," she called out, but it fell flat against the electrifying atmosphere, almost like background noise in my epic montage. "Karen, no one in here looks embarrassed. In fact, are you sure you don't want to join us?" Even as I offered her a plastic cup filled with lemonade, I couldn't help but feel like I was playing a high-stakes game of psychological chess against someone utterly unprepared. Her bright eyes betrayed her frustration. I could see her mind cranking, likely plotting her next outlandish maneuver to regain control. But feeling 10 steps ahead, I continued to engage with the community, serving lemonade with all the flair of a master bartender. "Even you, Karen, a cool drink to chill that overworked heart of yours?" It became a delightful dance, managing repartee and maintaining my maternal entertaining stance amid the chaos. The crowd buzzed like bees, catching sight of Karen's visible ire, transforming her severe frown into an enjoyable element of our suburban circus. As I took in the joyous nature of my surroundings mingled with a sense of triumph, a revelation struck me hard. Isn't community all about supporting one another through the ridiculous? Just then, I could almost envision the headlines of tomorrow's news. "Local woman turns garage into DMV haven, challenging HOA tyranny." The excitement was palpable, the backlash against Karen's reign of neighborhood terror palpable. But could I sustain the energy fueled by this chaotic warmth, or would she unleash some overwhelming show of authority? Could I muster another wave of laughter to ride into tomorrow? The stage was set, the spotlight was on, and I was ready for the encore. What would be the next act in this suburban drama? The atmosphere was thicker than a pot of homemade stew and just as warm, with laughter bubbling over like an effervescent soda on a summer day. My sign, proudly emblazoned with Jenna's DMV, "Every license comes with a side of salsa," became the centerpiece of this unlikely suburban revelry. I handed out fake license plates featuring silly nicknames like Mike the Mechanic and Karen the Control Freak, each eliciting chuckles and snorts of agreement. "Don't worry, Karen," I beamed at her with all the sweetness of honey and sarcasm combined. "One day, you might earn yourself a plate like Queen of Compliance." The crowd roared with laughter, and for a moment, I envisioned a golden crown lowering from the skies to grace her perfectly coiffed head. Just as I thought I had reached the zenith of absurdity, Karen's eyes narrowed to slits behind her oversized sunglasses. The look she shot me could have melted steel, if it weren't for the wave of support rolling behind me. "You think this is funny, Jenna?" she shouted, her voice barely cutting through the pandemonium, which had turned into a joyful ruckus. "You're only encouraging bad behavior. What will the neighborhood think?" My neighbors rallied loudly in response, and the cacophony felt like a stylish rebellion chorus rising against her effortlessly stale order. "Bad behavior? This feels like freedom," someone called out, and soon an improvised multimedia debate erupted, all every bit as serious as a discussion about the proper height for mailbox flags. Who knew the HOA's rules could inspire such creativity? I bellied my way to the front line of this battle of wills, eyes glinting with mischief. "Karen, let's face it, nobody enters a DMV feeling inspired. This is about making the often dreaded paperwork a celebration." I waved my arms as though I were orchestrating a symphony, the kids dancing around me like confetti. With every bold declaration, their cheers electrified the air around us, fueling my audacity. Karen's stiff jaw danced a little, caught between outrage and the sheer absurdity of being rejected by her fussy little castle of rules. Mike chimed in next to me, concocting ludicrous ideas for licensing. "You should let the kids design their own cars too. Imagine, a neighborhood rainbow fleet." As the suggestion spiraled, I could see Karen becoming more like a background actor in a sitcom, utterly befuddled by the comedy unfolding before her. Despite the hurdles of Karen's disparagement, I felt emboldened by the momentum of our impromptu community. "Let's not just stop at licenses. Who wants to register for Freedom Karaoke next?" I called, my voice slicing through the chaos like a hot knife through butter. The children and adults alike burst into cheers, and a spontaneous chant erupted involving freedom and fun. It felt like I had unearthed some hidden lexicon of joy that had laid dormant in our little neighborhood for too long. Just then, I spotted Karen shifting uncomfortably on her impeccably polished heels, her disdain morphing into a citation of my lack of authority. I rolled my eyes. Authority had already fled with the paperwork chaos, replaced instead with community spirit. It was almost poetic. "Hey, Karen, isn't it time we built a little levity into our lives?" I retorted, summoning a dramatic flourish as though I were unveiling a grand statue to the triumph of fun over fear. "We can license imaginary pets too. How about bubble-blowing unicorns? My eyebrows danced playfully, and the crowd erupted again in raucous laughter. Seeing Karen's impeccably structured world teeter on the brink of oblivion gave me near Herculean strength. For every insult hurled my way, I stood proud, emboldened by my friends and neighbors. In this rowdy gathering, even the loneliest corners of suburbia bloomed brightly, suffused with laughter and hope. Yet, I still wondered under all that uncertainty, what might be next? Surely Karen had a trick left up her meticulous sleeve. Despite myself, I pondered how much further this melodrama could unfold. I grabbed the nearest child, who proudly sported a rainbow mustache drawn with markers, and shouted, "What would you do if you were the DMV president?" To which he retorted with a panache only a 5-year-old could muster, "Pizza parties." My laughter echoed alongside Mike's booming guffaws, and it struck me that this unique moment had transformed our frustrations into a tapestry of shared struggles and silly dreams. Perhaps we could take this carnival spirit beyond our garage. Or maybe we could just rent a bouncy castle next? The skies felt limitless, and as long as I had this support, there was little I feared. Riding high on the optimism and laughter, I lead the charge for another round of karaoke. Suddenly the mood shifted from pandemonium to a full-blown roast of Karen herself. "You sing next, Karen," someone shouted. As my neighbors chortled agreed, her face turned the brightest shade of crimson, and it was clear she didn't appreciate being the muse of our joyous soiree. I knew then. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was the community pushing the boundaries of what the HOA could reasonably control. The breeze carried the sweet sound of unity, making it almost like a grandma's famous baking recipe, where love was the secret ingredient. With a flourish fit for a Broadway finale, I turned to face my neighbors, the sun illuminating an aura around us. Let's send Karen home with a heartfelt memento, a karaoke performance she will never forget. I raised my mic and belted out a high-pitched rendition of a parody chronicling our HOA woes, and as the humor hit its peak, it was evident this garage had become a sanctuary of triumph. The cheers and claps reverberated through the neighborhood, and it felt like we'd hit our crescendo. And I realized then all over again, this absurd yet glorious escapade, stemming from a trivial HOA incident, was morphing into an unexpected brainchild that bonded us closer together. Who knew a little garage drama could ignite such community spirit and celebration of shared defiance? I couldn't wait to see what would spring from the chaos next. Saturday mornings are my favorite. There's something magical in the way the sun glimmers through the trees. The neighborhood is quiet, and I get to hide away in my garage with my collection of tools, DIY projects, and the remnants of yesteryear's failed attempts at Pinterest perfection. I was reassembling my trusty old drill when suddenly, like an overzealous storm cloud on a bright day, in soared Karen Thompson. She marched in as if she were on a catwalk, her pastel cardigan fluttering behind her, and those oversized sunglasses positioned perfectly to shield not just her eyes, but her entire ego from the glaring truth. She had a little too much time on her perfectly manicured hands. "What in the world are you doing, Jenna?" she exclaimed, feigning concern for my well-being while clearly reveling in the theatrics of the moment. "Is that a tool I see? This looks suspiciously like unauthorized commerce." I blinked at her, momentarily paralyzed by the absurdity of the accusation. Unauthorized commerce? In my garage? Just then, I half expected to hear a gavel slam or to be summoned by a jury of my lost houseplants to defend myself in this whimsical courtroom of Karen's mind. I could almost hear the dramatic music playing in the background as I straightened up and said, "If by commerce you mean I occasionally sell a few homemade birdhouses at the local craft fair to fund my gardening obsession, then, Karen, I designate this garage as a scenic marketplace." She scowled, obviously forgetting that not everyone operated at her uniquely tiresome level of utmost seriousness. I mean, who decided the world needed another person meticulously policing the associations of neighborhood hobbies? As she crossed her arms and began her diatribe about the sanctity of our neighborhood and the regulations set forth in Section 326 of the HOA bylaws, I couldn't resist a snort. Did she honestly think I'd be rattled by her droning on about detailed legal jargon? I tried to suppress a laugh, but quickly realized my face was betraying me. An unintentional smirk crept across my lips. "Karen, dear," I said with exaggerated politeness, "you do realize this isn't a business. I'm not selling pots and pans in my garage on the black market." If I had meant to mock her with that last comment, it seemed to grace the theatrical stage beautifully, because on she went about the public view of our neighborhood's commercial activities. This was apparently a health and safety concern of epic proportions. I imagined people traipsing through our cozy suburb in a dramatic search for gray market birdhouses. Meanwhile, My friend Mike popped his head in, hair tousled and flannel half untucked, trying to understand the spectacle. "Looks like someone took the neighborhood watch a bit too far, huh?" he quipped, slapping a hand on my shoulder as he surveyed the scene. Behind him, the weather was blissfully warm, and I could feel the laughter bubbling up from my core. It was as if we were caught between two sitcoms. Here was Karen strutting around, fueled by outrage, while I resurrected my inner diva and enclosed myself in a delightful banter battle. Inspired by this incredible display of absurdity, a wild idea sparked in my brain like an electric shock. Why not turn my business into something that Karen would truly despise? The DMV. I could easily transform my garage into the last thing this pretentious HOA queen would want to see on her evening strolls. She would recoil in horror at the thought of using my garage for a DMV branch, rife with chaotic lines and apathetic clerks. The imagery alone filled me with delight. "You know what, Karen?" I proposed, an impish grin spreading across my face. "If you insist on treating my garage like a commercial warehouse, I might as well run a DMV branch right out of here. More people could use licenses right here in suburbia." Her mouth dropped open. I imagined the wheels in her mind spinning furiously. Karen's expression morphed from outrage to sheer disbelief, and it was magical. That's ridiculous. You can't just take something as vital as our DMV into your garage," she sputtered, her perfect posture wavering like a tree during an intense storm. Oh, how I wished I had a camera to capture that moment. If I were to produce the most delectable sweetness of irony, turning my garage into a government space drenched in red tape and complaining patrons was the cherry on top. I could see the next HOA newsletter headline now. "Local woman turns garage into DMV, community in shambles." With every ounce of confidence I could muster, I doubled down on my elucidated antics. "But Karen, it's a simple DIY project. I could put in form stations, and they could always use the freshly painted walls as waiting areas. If you want input on decorating, I know a lovely palette of neutral tones that'll match your cardigan." Emboldened by Mike's muffled laughter, I could feel the weight of indignation lifting, replaced by reckless glee. This chaotic showdown that began as a mundane afternoon was now my groundbreaking revolt against Karen's ruling reign. After all, if she wanted to govern my garage, then it would become her worst nightmare. Would our peaceful suburb now have a DMV run out of my garage? Or would Karen finally realize how ridiculous her complaints were? With the devious idea of converting my garage into a DMV branch swirling in my mind, I sat down at my kitchen table, plotting every glorious detail while trying to suppress the smirk that threatened to escape. First things first, I had to generate enthusiasm for this epic project. So, naturally, I called Mike. "Picture this," I exclaimed, mantle aflame with creativity. "I'm about to turn the borough's most dreaded place into a radiant beacon of bureaucratic joy. No more long lines, but rather an assembly of disgruntled citizens in my very own garage, armed with application forms and pens. It'll be a riot." Mike chuckled, his usual carefree manner turning slightly conspiratorial. I could see the wheels turning in his head. "Oh, you're going to need a sign, something like Jenna's DMV, where your patience goes to die." The idea of that twisted slogan sent us both into fits of laughter as we brainstormed utterly ludicrous ways to decorate my DMV. The real fun began when I decided to draft my official proposal to the state. As a self-proclaimed DIY expert, I gathered every ridiculous office supply I could find: fluorescent neon paper, colored markers, and an excessive amount of glitter glue, because why write a boring proposal when I could add a little pizzazz? Channeling my inner bureaucrat, I typed up the most professionally absurd document imaginable. "Dear esteemed bureaucrats," I began, "I submit for your approval the establishment of a DMV branch located at my geographical coordinates. Insert my address with flair. This delightful motor vehicle facility is aiming for efficiency and, need I say, fun. I'll include complimentary coffee and inspirational quotes on the walls." Each sentence practically oozed sarcasm, yet I couldn't deny the thrill bubbling inside me. This was becoming an exciting bait and switch against Karen's dogged business assertions. The pièce de résistance came when I included a detailed floor plan with doodles of how my garage could be pivoted into a DMV operation. I distinctly imagined bulky desks fashioned from sawhorses, a coffee station, the most critical component, and even a waiting area draped in a deluxe selection of lawn chairs I found at the local thrift store. I laughed maniacally at the thought of Karen erupting in disbelief as she graced these very chairs for her next license renewal. My neighborhood watch overseer would be able to watch my triumphant rise from unauthorized entrepreneur to beloved DMV lord. I hit send on my flashy proposal and practically leapt out of my seat as adrenaline pulsed through my veins like jet fuel. Was this what revolution felt like? Humbled under the oppressive rule of a self-appointed HOA queen, I was about to create my own kingdom, one filled with endless complications and semi-filled forms. As the days rolled on, word began to spread like wildfire through our polite community about the impending DMV branch in my garage. My neighbors gathered, eyes wide with curiosity and more than a sprinkle of excitement. "I heard you're starting a DMV?" A woman from 2 doors down asked breathlessly, her shopping bag semi-forgotten by her side. Word went around that my garage would soon be the hottest ticket in town, and I loved every minute of it. As Karen's face turned redder with each rumor traveled, I envisioned her gripping her armchair tighter as she thundered screams about preserving neighborhood standards. Oh, how the tables had turned, not one for quiet resolutions. I began to notice my confidence surging. I felt like I had stepped into the leading role of a sitcom where Karen was merely a supporting cast member, caught in her own absurdity. But the best part of this whole shenanigan was Karen's unveiled fury. Just as I was basking in the anticipation of my garage launching as the DMV's most unconventional branch, I received a not-so-charming knock at my door. It was Karen, flanked by a couple of unsuspecting neighbors, wearing an expression that could only be described as a mix of incredulity and indignation. "This is completely unacceptable, Jenna," she stammered, waving the complaint letters in my direction like weapons of war. "You think this is some kind of game? You cannot turn your garage into a DMV." With an exaggerated eye roll, I swirled around, ended my sipping of lemonade dramatically, and motioned for her to join me at my newly designated DMV welcome desk, which was a splendid old folding table. "Oh, but Karen, darling, a game is exactly what we're playing, and judging by your expression, it seems I hold all the cards." The feigned seriousness echoed comically throughout the air, while the bewildered neighbors exchanged suppressed laughter and whispers. The ultimate showdown was upon us, the moment where the community could either rally to support their beloved, self-appointed DMV queen or scurry under their own porch to escape the overwhelming hilarity of it all. I could already feel the anticipation in the air as Karen, still spluttering indignant words, growing angrier with every nervous chuckle shared amongst the neighbors. Meanwhile, Mike stood beside me, leaning casually against my garage door, his expression filled with admiration for my audacity. "Not bad for a little DIY project, huh?" he murmured, smirking at the mental image of Karen grappling with her controls slipping away. In that absurd headspace, I chose to embrace the chaos and ride the wave that was about to crest. Would I actually bring a DMV into the neighborhood, or would Karen's tirade extinguish the flame before it ignited? Either way, the grand ride was only beginning. As the glorious chaos unfolded, it became nearly impossible for me to control my giggles while observing Karen's slow unraveling. With each vehement proclamation about community standards, her carefully honed persona started to slip. The pristine cardigan that always looked so prim began to rumple as she gestured wildly, and I had to stifle the urge to pull out a notepad and start doodling little cartoon versions of her, maybe even caricature her as a grumpy DMV employee. "Karen, sweetheart," I interrupted, waving my hands exaggeratedly to silence her wave of complaints. "Why don't we take a moment to appreciate the ingenuity here? How many other garages in our fair neighborhood can boast such a state-of-the-art facility? This could be the prototype for 21st century DMV locations who wouldn't want to process paperwork in a community garage." The neighbors couldn't help but chuckle, their amusement blatantly evident while Karen's head began to resemble a boiling kettle. It was clear that the tide was turning. One neighbor, Alan from down the street, leaned forward, his arms crossed, an eyebrow raised in mock skepticism. "So, will you be offering expedited service or just the regular 5-hour wait?" His laughter ignited a ripple of chuckles in the crowd. I could practically hear the gears of resistance grinding in Karen's head as she searched for a comeback, the deluge of neighbors' eyes sparkling with mischief, igniting her ire further. She tried to regain her composure, poised as ever in her blazer and exquisitely styled hair, but couldn't quite mask the fury flaring in her slate blue eyes. "This is simply against the bylaws. You know what comes next. I'll have the full force of the HOA behind me," she sputtered, waving her papers that by now looked like they had gone through a blender. It was almost too delicious. I could taste the sweetness of victory through the pandemonium that was quickly morphing into a surreal comedic showdown. However, I wasn't finished with my performance just yet. "Oh, Karen," I said, leaning into the role of the animated DMV manager I had envisioned, waving an imaginary wand as if to conjure my fictional kingdom. "Step right up. Who would like to be the next lucky patron? I promise, there are no hidden fees, just hidden fun." The neighbors erupted in laughter at my unabashed banana split pie of a display. It was downright exhilarating, and just like that, my garage wasn't some foreboding fortress of bureaucracy anymore. It was alive with laughter. I could see more than just amusement on the faces around me. It was a sense of solidarity forming against a tyrant in pastel. And here I was at ground zero, baking the cake that would top this glorious fiesta. Karen, visibly flustered and running out of arguments, shifted her focus from me to the crowd, desperately trying to rally support for her hopeless complaint. "You can't let her do this," she pleaded, pointing accusingly at me. A dramatic gasp rippled through my neighbors, as if I had revealed a sordid secret. But it didn't quite work out how she had planned. I could see chuckles exchanged amongst them. "Do you really want to defend her after this?" Gary shouted out, his voice booming like a town crier. "I'd rather wait in line at Jenna's DMV than at the actual DMV, any day." They were choosing sides, and I could feel the winds of fate in my favor. Karen's dramatic endeavor to stir the pot was backfiring rapidly, like an overambitious soufflé collapsing with a decisive plop. But then came the moment that turned the tide decisively in my favor, a misguided, yet beautifully strategic question from Mike. He cleared his throat, commanding attention with an infectious grin. "So, Jenna, what kind of snacks are we offering for the patrons? Because if I'm stuck here while Karen's renewing her license, I want some chips." It was a pivotal moment, and the jovial chaos shifted the channel from monotony back to fun. I couldn't have asked for a better springboard. "Oh, darling neighbors, who wouldn't want a pre-processed bag of chips while contemplating the finer aspects of license renewals?" I exclaimed, arms dramatically wide open like I was unveiling a Broadway show. The neighbors roared with laughter. I was pretty sure I caught an amused tear escaping from one of the ladies clutching her popcorn. I cued my action for effect. I would be the ultimate DMV superstar. Just when I thought I was riding the wave of momentum victoriously, Karen, perhaps fueled by sheer indignation, stormed forward. "You think this is humorous, Jenna? You're making a mockery of our neighborhood values," she cried, pointing a perfectly manicured finger as if it had all gone selfishly wrong, her voice slicing through the merriment. "I'll have you know that the principles of this community do not allow for such tomfoolery." The crowd hushed, waiting for my response to this ultimate moment of confrontation. It was my time to shine, and whether or not I became the neighborhood pariah remained to be seen. "Tomfoolery, Karen," I retorted with theatrical flair, directing my attention at the gathering crowd. "I'd say this is the spirit of innovation, a true playground for all. And what's wrong with a little laughter?" The palpable excitement surged back, ready for my encore. Would the HOA oblige, or would it all come crashing down around me like a poorly planned parade? The stage was set for a glorious showdown. The tension in the air could have been sliced into pieces with a butter knife, and honestly, I wasn't even sure if I was more anxious or exhilarated. Karen's face was a portrait of anger and disbelief, like someone had just told her that her beloved pastel cardigan was, in fact, last season. "Jenna, you're crossing a line," she exclaimed, her words dripping with scandal. But she wasn't prepared for the tidal wave of camaraderie that washed over the gathered neighbors as they rallied around me, their laughter and amusement filling my garage like the soft hum of background music at the DMV, only far less monotonous. I held my ground, throwing my hands up in a theatrical gesture, a cheerleader in muddy fight, but one whose pom-poms were fashioned from the slippery threads of defiance. "Oh, Karen, sweetheart, you might want to check your bylaws. I assure you they have a subsection for community morale, which I seem to have skyrocketed," I winked, channeling all my inner diva. With each line I delivered, I could feel Mike's eyes sparkling with laughter, while the crowd behind him transformed into my loyal supporters, their energy pulsating like a live wire. "What's next, Karen? Are you going to formally complain about me being a local entrepreneur?" A flourish of dramatic enthusiasm followed my declaration, and several neighbors gasped exaggeratedly, a show-stopping reaction to keep the drama alive. I had now officially appointed myself as the self-declared DMV queen in this moment of sheer kinetic joy. The cacophony of laughter mixed with bursts of applause was music to my ears. You know what they say, the DMV is just like a family gathering, people waiting in line for an eternity, unexpected drama, and plenty of paperwork to sort through. Their laughter mingled with mine, igniting sparks in the atmosphere while I caught a glimpse of Karen's incredulous stare, as though I had just stepped through a portal into a world where nonsense reigned supreme. Just when I thought I had the crowd wrapped around my finger like a plush toy at a carnival game, Karen made her counterattack. These people were looking forward to a harmonious neighborhood. You're dismantling what we've worked for, she declared, the pitch of her voice reaching a level that would have made a dog howl in protest. Harmony? That's rich. I couldn't help but giggle at the sheer audacity. I'd wager the only harmony she sought out was to keep all of us under her thumb, all while sipping tea and baking potato salad for her next HOA barbecue. I scoffed and leaned back against the doorframe, channeling my inner knowing and carefree best friend vibes. Harmony can coexist with a little bit of fun, can't it? If I say I can effectively manage paperwork while serving chips and salsa, why should you be upset? We could both serve our community better. Speaking of, anyone want to help me design drive-thru-ish DMV t-shirts? My companions roared with laughter, creating a locust of camaraderie that dared to challenge the authoritarian spirit of our neighborhood. As if sensing the tide of support shifting decisively in my direction, I poured on the theatrics, my body swelling with a captivating determination akin to a motivational speaker who had just found their groove. In fact, I could see it now. Drive-through DMV in the neighborhood garage could be a booming side hustle. Why limit ourselves to boring lines when there's thrilling fun right here? A chorus of "yes" erupted from my newfound audience, a delightful sound that swept over me like the refreshing breeze on a sweltering summer day. I paused, soaking in the moment, watching Karen's well-practiced expression morph into a twisted mix of disbelief and passive aggression. The more I watched her struggle for composure, the lighter my spirit lifted, and I couldn't resist adding, "Seriously, Karen, with your passion for rules, I could use you as my head of operations. Just think of the teamwork." The laughter from my neighbors continued to echo like applause, and I suddenly felt like a rock star taking over my own show on stage, eager to spin the narrative in my favor. It was intoxicating, the thrill of reclaiming my garage from the shackles of HOA oppression. It felt like batting back a swarm of annoying fruit flies, and in that epic battle against Karen, I started to envision all the outrageous signage I could hang to further the spirit of rebellion. "And how about we throw in a 'No Karen Allowed' sign, just for the fun of it?" I exclaimed mischievously. Alan, the neighbor in the front row, nearly fell over from laughter, and I could swear the sunlight gleamed brighter, illuminating the absurdity of it all. It was becoming clearer by the minute. I wasn't merely claiming a garage, I was setting fire to the oppressive status quo, and heralding a revolution of joy and hilarity amidst the borderline bureaucratic oppression. Finally realizing the caliber of my impending victory, Karen launched one last desperate plea, her voice trembling under the weight of defeat. "You're a menace, Jenna. What will it take for you to see reason?" Her eyes sparkled with unadulterated frustration, and yet I couldn't help but relish her unease. "Oh, my dear Karen," I started, pausing for extra dramatic effect as I laid on the faux empathy thicker than her layer of pastel makeup. "You're right. Maybe I could lend you my manual for humor if you promise not to infuse that strict persona into every HOA meeting." The crowd erupted once more into cheers and chortles, and I savored the overwhelming sensation of liberty coursing through my veins. "How about we flip the script and let me host a Jenna-approved neighborhood night where we can iron out all these ridiculous complaints with ice cream and laughter? Wouldn't that be a delightful twist to our HOA struggles?" I felt unstoppable, adrenaline surging as I envisioned the spark of rebellion growing stronger with every laugh and every cheeky remark. What would Karen do next? How far was she willing to take this enthralling game of HOA chess? Would our suburban battlefield turn into an arena of joy instead of a dim chamber of rules and regulations? Thanks for sticking around with me through the chaos to the end. Want more high-stakes HOA drama? Check out our recent HOA clash with the video on the right, or let YouTube pick your next wild ride with the video on the left. Whichever way you go, buckle up. There's plenty more HOA insanity on the way. Tune in again for more HOA chaos.